Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm JJ Flazanes, producer and empowerment strategist. I'm excited about today's show. What is your soul level? The guest who I'm bringing on today, Ainslie MacLeod, I'll tell you a little bit about Ainslie in a second, but I want to address that this show is piggybacking on the ascension that we talked about with Isha Patel. There's a consciousness, there's an awareness, there's a relationship to what is happening in the world and where we are individually in that progression, in that expansion. And I think today's show is going to answer a lot of questions, a lot of maybe issues you may be having. I know it did for me about sort of the world in general. I can't wait to share today's show. But last week we talked about the ascension with Isha Patel. And if you haven't heard it, I really would recommend stopping right now and going back and listening to that. It'll just be a really nice flow to go from that show to this episode and to invite you to our live guided visualization. When I talked with Isha on that show, I had asked her at the end of the episode if she had something to give people to help, and she didn't. And she said she'd been thinking about it and she wanted to do it. And when we stopped recording, I said, well, let's just do it. So, of course, we coordinated and we are bringing you together a live guided visualization on helping with this planetary ascension. And to sign up for that, you can go to jjflazanes.com/Isha, EESHA. And again, the link will be in the show notes, jjflazanes.com/Isha, EESHA. And it will be live only one time. And it's a very particular point in time, actually. Isha decided because of sort of different kinds of alignments and grid lines and astrological energies. And so this is when we're doing it. And I hope you can join us live. It's going to be super powerful. I'm very excited. Ainslie MacLeod is an internationally acclaimed past life psychic, spiritual teacher, and award-winning author of The Instruction, The Transformation, and most recently, The Old Soul's Guidebook. Ainslie specializes in exploring past lives to reveal your life's purpose and has been a featured guest on Oprah's SuperSoul conversation series. He also hosts a weekly Soul World Sunday. You can learn more about that at soulworldsunday.com, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the show, Ainslie.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you for having me on here.
Well, thank you for saying yes. I was told about your book, The Instruction, Living the Life Your Soul Intended. I was told about this book years ago. Let's see. I think it was even pre-marriage or at the beginning. So we're talking 2006, maybe, I think is when someone told me about this book.
Well, 2007 is when it came out. So
well, okay. Then there you go. It couldn't have been 2006. It must have been 2007 or 2008 even by that point. And I was in a mastermind and I don't remember how it came up. And somebody talked about soul levels. And prior to that conversation, one of the very first therapists that I saw in California when I got here was a Sikh. And when I saw her, I only had enough money to go to one session. I think it was like $200. And I saved up and I went to this one session and I said, give me as much information and to-dos as you can in this session. And I don't remember what I was looking for actually back then. I think my life coach at the time had recommended that I go. And when I walked in, she explained to me, she said, well, you're an old soul. Now this was her, again, I'm not going to be completely accurate because again, this was a long time ago. It's just actually that conversation happened, probably in 2002, 2003. She said to me, there are 7 levels of soul. And within each level, there are 5 levels or something. And she put up her 7 fingers. And then she said, you're on the next to last level somewhere in those 5. And it was just to show me sort of a range of soul levels. And this is where I was. And I thought, okay. And no one had ever really told me that specifically. And again, whether she's right or wrong, or that's her interpretation, I didn't know any better at the time. And I just took it in and said, okay, I'm an old soul. Cool. And I'm kind of towards the end. And then I do a lot with astrology and I'm a Pisces. I've got a Sag rising and a Sag moon and a Sag soul. So I have that sort of, I feel old soul, wise, seen the world kind of, energy.
Been there, done that.
Right. Yeah. And a little bit, but I'm still like everyone else. I have my stuff and you learn your stuff. And so back to this mastermind and I was told there was a book on it. I thought, oh, there's a book. okay, what's that book? And it was the instruction. And can I tell you how hard I looked to find your book? Now, it should have been easy to find it. I don't, because I wrote it down in a notebook that I never visited back. And I just tried to remember and I had to find that woman and say, what was the book? And she said the instruction. So I immediately bought your book, and I literally haven't read the whole thing because I literally stay just in this soul level. And so I'm just so fascinated. And I want to start off, before we get into the soul level, I want to start off with your story. I want people to know, and I want to know a little bit about how you're doing what you're doing. At what point did you realize you had these gifts to be able to see and know? And like, are you clairvoyant and clairaudient? So Ainslie, please tell us your story.
All right, my story. Let's see, in a nutshell. Well, a lot of people ask me if I was always psychic, if I always knew that, and the answer is most definitely not. I grew up in Scotland, and looking back on my life, once I started doing this work, which is about 20 years ago, I was able to reflect and see all the times that weird things of a spiritual nature had happened, precognition mostly. I'd look at a newspaper article and go, well, that's weird. They printed this a week ago. And I remember reading it. All those sort of things that didn't make sense. I never put down to being psychic. Over the years, I lived in London for 15 years, and I used to go and see a psychic there. She was always telling me I was psychic and she'd be doing something with it. And I was always telling her, I wouldn't be paying you, if I could do it myself, So I just never thought I had the ability. Just never really crossed my mind. And even a couple of times, strangers would come up to me. Somebody came up to me at Gatwick Airport one time. She said, I'm psychic. You're psychic. You should be doing something with it. Somebody came up to me in a pub twice, actually. So drunk the second time, I can't remember if it's the same person coming up twice or not, but 2 times somebody said, you're psychic. My spirit guides tell me you should be doing something with it. And even then I still thought, well, this is bananas. I mean, although strangely, my belief, I was a total atheist. I mean, I had no time for, religion or spirituality or anything, all that woo-woo stuff. Yet I was really drawn to psychics, and they to me. And I was in Hawaii at the end of a very long journey. I'd ended up living in the Bay Area, and I took a trip to Hawaii. I had a session with a psychic there who told me that my Uncle John, who, like me, had been an atheist, she said, oh, he's a spirit guide, wants to work with you. And I said, well, I keep hearing that. And the skeptic in me kept saying, yeah, everybody's got an Uncle John, lucky guess or something. But the day after, I was in a bookshop, and I was wandering around in a clearly altered state. I remember even thinking, oh, I feel really spacey. And I just turned a corner and bumped into my uncle. And as real as life for just a second. He'd been dead at that point for about 10 years. So it was a little bit of a shocker, but at the same time, quite normal in a weird way. But he was there for a second, but with a longer message about working together. And that was, clearly the spirit world had been trying to get my attention for quite a while, sending psychics, across pubs to talk to me and things like that. And I've not been paying any attention. And no matter how often somebody told me I should be doing psychic work, I didn't even know how to get started. So for me, that was a huge defining moment. I mean, it rocked my world. I mean, it really changed everything. It was so unmistakable. And so a few days later, I was back on the mainland, and I just thought, well, I'll give it a try. Let's see if I can connect with the world. So I connected through my uncle, first of all, in spirit, and found that I had some ability. I mean, like any talent, you have to work on it. And I would never have had a career if I'd been, if I was still reading as slowly as I did back then. It was very laborious. But I through him, I was introduced to a level of spirit guides that I work with now, and they helped me to develop my skills, develop the language, and then at some point, after I've been doing it for a while, actually I practiced for about 3 years on my own before ever reading anybody. I was so paranoid about getting something wrong, and overly cautious according to the spirit world, but I finally got out, started reading people, and then the spirit guides gave me the instruction, which is the system that I describe in the book. And for me, that I'm not organized, but my spirit guides are. So it really helped me to create this system, which I've been using ever since, to really understand who people are, why they're the way they are. It points to everything that you're here to do. I talk about how past lives explain everything, and I don't think there's anything about we humans that isn't past life related. So that's actually become a big part of my work over the years, is looking at past lives, clearing out energy and memories that are interfering with your ability to move forward in this life, and then allowing people to even finding out what they're really here to do, and kind of releasing the handbrake, letting them go forward with greater confidence, certainty, and so on. But the big thing for me with the instruction, kind of like you, is really getting clear about that idea of soul ages, because that's all to do with just reincarnation, coming back all the time. Your soul grows, and you can get a pretty good idea of how somebody sees the world through their soul age. I mean, we just see it differently as we age. You were talking about somebody having a system where, I mean, there's different systems. I'm not the first person to talk about soul ages. The system of my spirit guides gave me is based on the number 10, not for any spiritual reason. It's just simple convenience. And they talk about there being 10 soul ages with 10. I haven't really written about this, but there are 10 levels within each one. So when I'm working with somebody, it can give me a pretty clear idea of what they're doing, or how they're going to see the world, or maybe even what they're working on as well. So and what it did with discovering this whole concept of soul ages, I think for me it was like that big aha moment where you go, oh, that explains it. Because I remember being a kid in Scotland and watching the TV and seeing the civil rights riots and demonstrations in the American South, just a little kid, and going, wow, what is wrong with these people? Do we need to send them books or something? Are they just so uneducated or whatever? What I didn't realize is that what you were seeing was young soul versus old soul. And this is all to do with the soul's journey and where you go over the many lifetimes. Because as your soul ages, you go from a place of me to we, or from fear to love. And so the older soul tends to be more accepting, less judgmental, more concerned about the welfare of other people. The younger souls tend to be much more about themselves. There's greater prejudice because they just haven't really had the experience that older souls have had. It makes a huge difference when you yourself have been in every color skin in every part of the world, and having all different experiences that you've had in terms of how you're accepting towards others. As you get to be a really old soul, you don't see the differences as much as what really unites us. So that was for me, it was the real big thing, like to go, oh, that's why we have the political divide that we have, social divide. Politically, as the soul ages, it tends to go from more fear-based conservatism more to being more progressive. Spiritually, I often talk about how you go from being more full-on religious to more kind of considering yourself to be more spiritual rather than religious as you get as your soul ages.
I've often said, after I was told that levels, and so I like hearing that there's sort of an agreement, if you will, about how many levels within each level. But, and again, I don't care. It's just sort of the concept of that it's a little bit more complex, and we're trying to just make it easy. So like you said, be able to look at how someone sees the world. And I've used many systems for that, from astrology to birth order to love language to like all kinds of different systems to coach people and work with people and see how someone looks at the world, so that we know how to better work with somebody to get them from point A to point B. I've worked with clearing inherited emotional DNA. We've worked on, I work with law of attraction. So looking at frequencies and subconscious mind and all the wounds and things we carry and the belief systems, and looking back at all of that. And so this next level of, let's say, next system of looking at someone, after that Sikh said that to me, and I kind of knew that, I said, okay. And, when you hear something that is true, it resonates and you don't question
Oh,
it. And
yes,
it's just
absolutely.
truth and no one needs to prove it to me. And I'm that way with all kinds of things. I had Dr. Bruce Lipton on the show, and I joked with him that when I heard the title of his book, Biology of Belief, that's all I needed to hear. I'm like, yep. It's like, but I didn't know the science behind it, but I with 100% absolutely knew that it was true. I understood epigenetics on a cellular level that I couldn't explain, and I didn't need to. But I do recognize that there are people who do need to hear that in order to move, because like you said, they're skeptical, and all the people that told you, random people, you still thought it took you a long time to have a lot of people. Are you
really? Yeah.
Do you have an earth sign in you somewhere? I feel like there's some air and some earth.
I don't know anything about astrology. I'm Piscean, March 19th, if that helps, but I really don't know. I got to tell you, what's funny is that I'm literally looking at the spine of Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, as we speak. It's just sitting right there. And can I address what you said there?
Sure.
I think this is something about soul ages, and one of the reasons. Well, I was relating this to the QAnon phenomenon that's been going on just now. Somebody had written to me, feeling I'd written some critical stuff about QAnon, and somebody wrote to me and very snarky thing about, if they felt I was supporting Oprah, who's drinking the blood of babies, and I'm going, do you understand? Do you know how crazy you sound? Do you know how nuts that sounds? But when you're a younger soul, or if you're blocked emotionally, it's an odd thing. But actually, I should say, when you're an old soul, how you discern the truth is on two levels. There's a sort of cognitive level, but there's also the spiritual level. That ability to even look at a book title like you did and sort of have the feeling like, yeah, this speaks to me. People telling me that about, my book, The Instruction, I would say, yeah, I just felt it was real, true, It's that gut feeling that you can't define. Younger souls have a little bit more trouble with that. They're the ones that would, how would you know it's true? Because they're not getting the same input, really. It's the older soul, it's not coming on those two levels. They would have to do a background check to figure it out. Whereas the old soul can just go, yeah, it just makes sense, squares with my, my values, or, my understanding of life. It's much more this combination of intellect and intuition.
Well, taking that, I took that sort of point of view, and through the years of my life since then, I at one point recognized in my family that my brother, who's an Aries, and again, so in astrology, Aries is the first. I think he's got maybe a Gemini moon, and Gemini is also like the third. So we're talking about on the astrology line, he'd be the infant, and then he'd be like a toddler in the way he deals with emotion, and then just in his soul, again, astrologically. And as sort of life continued, I just got the hit that I think this is his first time on the planet. Like, I think this is actually his first life. And I would say that, not in any disrespect, but in the difference between he and I, and not just because based on astrology, a little bit based on astrology, but based on a feeling of, again, looking at life and how one deals with life and how one takes in information and either doesn't have a lot of ways to process or have a point of view. It's literally like the difference of taking in information, and that's just it. Like, whatever it is true. There's no questioning. There's no evaluating. There's no intuition. It's just everything is true. And I thought, I think this is his first time on the planet. So again, and I looked at your section about the soul levels, and I guess the next question I have about the soul levels in this book, because I just went straight there and I just started reading them, and I thought, who do I know who sounds like that? And I noticed that after the conversation about soul levels and the explanation, you talk about like a quiz or testing. So I guess the next conversation, because again, I just get stuck looking at like, okay, I think this is me, and I think this is you, and I think this is that person. I mean, is that in, without going further, I mean, can that be enough, or are there some ways to sort of solidify that what I feel might be true? But then I go, is that my ego though? Is that my ego saying that I'd like to be that, or is that really true?
Well, actually what I find when I'm working with people, that a lot of very old souls deep down, again, what I was talking about, intuitively they kind of know, but they worry that it might be egotistical to really think that you're a very old soul. So often their reaction is when I tell them, you are a very old soul, they're going, oh, I kind of thought that, but I didn't want to, it seemed egotistical. And that actually comes from something else that's in your soul's life plan, which is, your entire personality is chosen for every journey, kind of like a new suit of clothes for whatever your soul has planned. And there's part of that can then give you the message that it may be egotistical and, to want to be noticed or, to think you're something. There's a lot more to the life plan than just the soul ages, but I always start with that whenever I work with somebody. It's literally the first thing that I'd look at. If I could talk a little bit more about that, I'd just like to sort of just talk about the different levels. And also, if you'd be interested in knowing yours.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Yes.
I thought you might. But so there are 10 levels, like I say. The first 5, you would be considered a young soul. And to get through all 10 levels, you might be looking at something like 120 lifetimes. It could take you 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years on the physical plane to get through all of that, sometimes even longer. It just depends. You're going back and forth between here and the astral plane where you process and plan. And and some people have more lives, some people have fewer. It just depends on how quickly you're learning. But roughly the first half of the lives that you have would be as a young soul. But you've got the very, very young ones. And you come into this world right at level 1. You're going to be, I liken it to going into a party where everybody seems to know everyone else, and you're kind of standing there awkwardly going, oh gosh, I don't even speak the language or something. It's just like, it's so foreign. So the soul has a lot of fear when it comes in. It's just all very, very new. And as it grows, it goes through different stages. So, you get to level 2 or 3 where you're really trying to learn things like working together with others, all basic lessons in cooperation, forming strong communities. A lot of level 3 souls would be doing that. Usually there's, they create the kind of communities that are, they're often, they have strict laws. It helps to keep very young souls safe. As I say, there's a lot more fear when you're a younger soul. So they want to have laws, strict laws, often religious based. And that helps to, create a cohesive society, and would be the last place most old souls would want to live, to be very restrictive. One of the things about when you're a very young soul, you see, I mentioned this before, you see the differences more than what unites us. So that's why younger souls see really big differences between people of different religions, different skin colors. For the younger soul, men consider women to be inferior. It's just all that lack of experience. As the soul starts to age, it pushes out more into the world, and we have a consciousness in the States that's more sort of level 5. It's still kind of young soulish. It is changing. A lot's changing because of the influence of older souls and the shift in consciousness, the transformation that's happening right now. So it's fluid. It's kind of moving in the right direction. A lot of world leaders, people who are drawn to power, are going to be level 5 souls. So we tend to get that. It's why we still have wars and why we still have such a division amongst us. It's not to say young souls are bad or anything, just inexperienced. Once the soul gets into level 6, 7, 8, it starts to, the big shift actually that happens is at the beginning of level 6, where the soul gains an ability for introspection that's really impossible for younger souls. It starts to really question, who am I? What am I doing here? Am I doing the right thing? Starts to become deep down more aware of the reality of reincarnation as well. So, it might become more environmentally concerned. A younger soul would not be quite so concerned about the environment, at least in the long term, because they don't think about, well, I'll have to come back or other people have to come back. They just see it as like, yeah, they're here once. And the older soul is getting much more aware that, we need to take care of where we stand here. And the people I work with tend to be right up at the end. They're 8, 9, or 10 at the level. Most of the people I talk to would be level 9. There's the focus on spirituality that's very common when you get to be that age. And so a lot of people who are on the spiritual path are level 9. They're the ones who are going to be, you know, I don't have to encourage them to take yoga or meditate because they'll already be doing that usually. But wanting to feel like their life has meaning, that's the really big thing. And I think it unites really all the people that I work with, you know, looking for that deeper sense of meaning. Once you get up to the very end, level 10, you kind of want to just, you want to do what matters to you. This is the important thing. I always say the level 10 souls are the ones who would give up a great career in law or something to be a social worker for a fraction of the money because it feels more worthwhile. Often it's about wanting to make sure people benefit from what you're doing. So that's the sort of like soul levels, a little bit of a nutshell. I skipped over a couple. I mean, like level 7, you're working on creativity and innovation. Level 8, you're working on relationships. And there's a lot of subtleties, of course, once you start really going into the percentage of how far you are into any kind of soul level.
Can I guess mine?
You absolutely can. Let's see if you, I've got it written down. So go ahead.
I think I'm a 9.
Yep.
Okay. Just checking. I keep going back to it. And I'm like, 9 keeps sticking out. And I'm like, all right, I'm 9. Yeah. Just checking.
You're right up at the end of level 9, which is significant because in fact, this is where the percentages are quite useful. You can break down the soul level into the spirit guides break it down into multiples of 10. So I look at it'd be level 9, 10%, 20%, or whatever, and you're up at 80%, and the 80% is this is a time when you have to be working through a past life fear of rejection. Now, I liken it to playing a board game where you think you've won, you get to the end, but you can't leave the game until you throw the exact number, or you throw a 6 or something like that. You know, like you have to do something specific to get out at the end, and it's like that with being at level 8, level 9, 80%, because you have to work through rejection to be able to move on to the next level. It comes from a past life, which I'll talk about in a moment. It shows up in a couple of ways. One is a tendency to be a little bit of an outsider, maybe feel like you don't fully fit in. Part of that is to do with being such an old soul, because 98% of the population is going to be younger than you. So, you're not going to fit into the mainstream. You have to really put some effort in this life to find your tribe. But because of you working through the rejection, your soul never wants to sit with a fear. It wants to actually overcome it. And there's essentially 3 ways to overcome a past life fear of rejection. One is to do past life work, find out what happened to you. I think that's the most effective and quickest way. The second is to belong, because the more you can belong to maybe a group or an organization or whatever, and find that you don't get rejected, the more it heals on a soul level. But the elevated way of healing a fear of rejection is to be a uniter, bring other people together. And this is something that I found, I think, it might be without exception, I would say, let's say almost possibly every person who has a podcast and who's interviewed me, I found that they're working through that past life fear of rejection. What they're doing is they're healing themselves by bringing people together. You're really, you're creating a space for old souls to come and discuss old soul matters, things that really are important to older souls, and make them feel like they have community and belonging. It's considered to be a spiritual act, and a spiritual act is anything you do where you heal yourself by helping those who suffered as you have done in the past, usually in a past life, but it could be in this life. So everybody benefits from something like that. You're healing yourself, you're healing them. And that's what you're doing. You're kind of spiritual Pied Piper when you're doing this. You're creating the space. I
like that. I do. Spiritual Pied Piper. I like it.
So yeah, and well, let's talk about where this comes from. You had a past life. Now, I didn't get dates or anything, and I'm assuming this is a few hundred years back, but it's a significant one. And you know, at first glance, it doesn't look like, you know, particularly dramatic, but it will show up in so many almost predictable ways. So I'll tell you how I would expect it to show up and see how it compares to how you perceive your own experience. So the past life was in Hungary. Borders change, but you know, it's whatever, you know, that part of the world. You ended up in servitude. You became a slave as a result of being captured in a war. So you're a prisoner of war, and then you ended up being a slave for decades. It was a miserable experience. You were extremely overworked and extremely undernourished, and generally mistreated. Sometimes when I should talk a little bit about how I get this information. I get most of the information from the spirit world in sentences, so it's just like a story. They call it clairaudience. To me, it's a knowing. It's not like I hear a word or a voice in my ear, but I do get words that come up. It really fills my head. So in the moment, it's all I can get. You know, there would be nothing in there except what I'm getting from the spirit world. It helps to validate that that's, you know, where it's coming from as well. So I did get a visual though, which was showing this guy who had once been very fit, you know, very muscular, you know, very outdoorsy type, to being completely worn down, so wearing like really frayed, just, you know, tying rags around you just because you had nothing, you know, it's just the clothes have fallen apart, nobody's given you anything else. They said you had gastric issues from really bad nutrition. And at the time of the death, there was severe dehydration. It massively contributed to the death. So issues that come up from that past life that show up in this one. Rejection, of course, you know, it's the feeling of being abandoned by humanity, like nobody really cares, dying alone, body discarded, nobody really gave, you know, two hoots about how you were treated in life or in death. And that creates this fear of rejection, that the big one that you're working on, or one of the big ones. The other one is, and you'll see this with anybody who's been imprisoned or enslaved in a past life, they come into this life with a strong feeling of, don't tell me what to do. Like, you know, you imagine if you've been ordered around, you've had no freedom, then you don't want somebody ordering you to do things or micromanaging you or breathing down your neck. So you can notice that sort of don't tell me what to do reaction if somebody's trying to control you. And that's all, it always goes back to some time when you had no freedom. So the other thing that would show up from that is usually an exaggerated desire for freedom. It shows up in unusual ways sometimes because the association with freedom in the past life could be like the epitome of freedom for many, many past lives would have been getting on a horse and going somewhere. So I found a lot of people who are working through this past life fear of powerlessness will enjoy horse riding. But it will often be things like, I describe it as looking for something that gives the soul a feeling of the wind in the hair. So it could be driving a convertible, riding a motorcycle, cycling, surfing, skiing, mountain climbing, hiking, you name it, whatever gives you the feeling of like exhilaration and freedom. So those sort of things seem to be very, very important. Another fear that shows up is failure. So in this life, you're going to be cramming. You're going to be doing a lot because your soul it has an underlying fear that you won't get everything done. And the reality is you will, you know, but the soul never looks forward. It's not like it's seeing anything coming down the road. It's based on whatever whatever has gone on in past lives. The soul is always looking to past lives to get reference for the present. So it looks at the past and says, oh my gosh, we got taken off our life plan. We didn't get to do the things we were meant to do. That could happen now. And especially that fear often kicks in around the age of 40, you know, so the soul's aware and it goes, okay, well, we need to be figuring out where we're going from here. That's why I have the bulk of my clientele is, you know, in this narrow zone between 37 and 43. So you got failure. You've also, there is this, on a positive note, there's actually what's called a desire for immortality. It doesn't mean you want to live forever, but it means you want to leave a legacy or create a ripple effect or do something bigger than yourself in this life. You want to leave the world a better place for your having been here, in great part because your soul was meant to do things in the past life that obviously it couldn't. And now it's this almost that feeling of making up for lost time. So tell me if any of that doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The whole so rejection, absolutely. In fact, when I was getting married and there was like a family thing that happened, and basically I was excommunicated from my family. Okay, so there's right. Now, when I knew when that happened, I said, how did I create this? So not taking in a past life consideration, but really taking into and owning what part of me. And now I would use different words than I used then. I was very clear this was my journey. I was very clear this was my path. There was no mistake. There was no, this was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. This was absolutely on point. Was it fun? No. Was it, has it had a ripple effect of negativity in some ways? Absolutely. But I also know it freed me. And it freed me from that idea of bondage in a lower, younger soul environment. And again, I'm using different words now than I would have used then. But so I've learned, and having a podcast, being out in the world, I've been on video, on stages, I've been performing since I was 3. And when I first started putting videos up online, I had to make peace with, and definitely part of my learning curve and journey and healing and sharing with others, is how to take your power back and how to heal that when you have that first negative comment from somebody. The reason I have all the tools I have is to heal myself and learn and have these systems to say, that person, I can really get past my own stuff and be able to feel into the negativity coming at me and say, this isn't about me. This is about them. They're reflecting to me what the wounds they have that I'm triggering. And it has nothing to do with me. I'm the catalyst. I'm the mirror to them that they don't like. And therefore I'm the punching bag. And at some point,
that's so true. Yeah.
And at some point I recognized that I was the punching bag for people, for family members, for relationships. And I had to figure out my relationship to that and offer. So on the rejection and abandonment. So abandonment, those two things show up again in this choice of what I'm doing right now, into that I'm providing tools. I always say that the reason I started my show was to heal my marriage, which I didn't do and did feel up until even recently somewhat responsible for. Like, okay, I've done what, how did I fail? What didn't I do? And I realized that's a story. And I think I've cleared the majority of the forgiveness for myself, if you will, the holding myself responsible for fixing, for being the rescuer, for doing the right things. So that rejection definitely showed up in family and in my last relationship, and abandonment. And then the whole thing of freedom. I know my community is probably laughing and smiling when you say there's an exaggerated desire for freedom. So I've incarnated in this lifetime with so many damn Sagittarius so Sagittarians are about freedom seekers. They are freedom seekers. And I have 3 of them in my chart. And like what's going on here in the world, what I've had to work through in the last year is the balance of trying not to feel victimized and have that story of my own lack of freedom, because I don't care what everybody else does. That is your choice. Where I have a problem is when you tell me what to do, because you are not the boss of me. And my own intuition knows what's right for me, and nobody else can tell me. I don't care who you are, where you are. I know what's right for me first and foremost, and I will do the research needed to do that. So these 3 Sages have had such a time really shaping my experience in the last year and really calling to my attention. And I've done work on them. I've done some, not quite past life, although I have done some past life, but I've done some therapies, EMDR, and things around the idea of freedom and feeling trapped. So I've worked through some levels of that, but I just was laughing, and I thought anyone who knows me well enough is chuckling right now, because definitely I will always say, and my title that I came up with over years, because I started out as a personal trainer, is empowerment strategist. And the reason I chose empowerment strategist, empower, was the whole idea of freeing yourself from the story that you tell, freeing yourself from the obligations you hold, the whatever. So
it's all about freedom. Self-empowerment is all about freedom. And people who are here to really become empowered are people like you, that you're working through the past life fear of powerlessness. So you're learning to be an empowered woman. You're also you're working through self-worth issues. Certainly would go to this past life, but there probably are loads of opportunities in past lives to catch this particular fear. It's low self-esteem, basically, and that's part of what your journey in this life is, to develop the self-esteem. There's other things that play into it. There's the tendency to almost blame yourself, and sometimes taking too much responsibility. It's a risk you have to watch out for. I want to go back to the powerlessness. This is a really important thing, is that karma is involved here. So, and what that means is that you're trying to become a really empowered person. It's a life journey, if you like, but you have to be helping other people to do that. That's the sort of external aspect of it. So it's got internal, working on you, but also helping other people to be empowered. So it clearly shows up in your work. A great way to heal. I mean, you're on the fast track here.
Thank you. That I know. And for everyone who's listening, and I think I've said this before, but if I haven't, then here it is again. Whether it be the fire signs, whether it be the past lives, whether it be whatever combination of things, my journey that I'm on here, I would notice through different classes and different masterminds that I would be in, that I would kind of like clean house, like in terms of the people in my life, I'd change people like every so often. And of course, again, I would say, okay, well, who's the common denominator here? Well, it's me. All right. So what's wrong with this? And I had a teacher once say to me, you're on the fast track and not too many people are going to be moving at the speed you are. So if they're not with you, you're going to end up leaving them, or not leaving them, meaning I'm choosing. It's just like, they're just not going to be able to keep up. And
that's exactly what happens. Exactly.
Right. And then I had a therapist, the last, I guess, traditional therapist that I worked with when I had gone in there, who she and I we had a lot of things in common, but a lot of not. And it was really cute because she's a Taurus, and when I mentioned astrology, or let's say Carolyn Mace's work, soul contracts, she said, oh, she felt bad that I didn't have the right parents, is what she said to me. And I said, oh no, I chose them. I guess I did. They were who I needed to be who I am now, and to bring me here, and the way this all happened. But I never took offense to it or anything. But one of the things that she helped me see, I guess, or validate in one way, rather than me coming in and someone saying, well, here's all the broken parts about you, she said, honey, you're gifted, and it's going to be a little lonely at the top because you don't know how to relate to other people. And I thought, I don't know that this is a compliment. It feels good to say, okay, great, you're really super smart and you get it and blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, okay, well, that doesn't help me connect with people. That feels lonely. So for you to say it in a different way about soul level does really, again, in a way, validate my life. Hello, good, my life.
Good. Yeah, because you're searching for soul family all the time. And you don't necessarily come into the world with soul family. You do choose your family of origin, and they choose you. So, and that's, one of the most important fundamental things to understand, because it starts to make a lot more sense when you see it that way. Because people will go, oh my God, I had this dreadful experience, but there's going to be something in there. What happens to a lot of old souls like you is that you want to be on this fast track. And you don't want to keep coming back and working on all these fears. So what the soul does is it says, okay, how can we have these fears triggered to be able to work through them quickly? Instead of waiting till the age of 50 and maybe having a past life fear triggered and come up, as a result of some event in your life. How about we just get on the fast track, choose parents. Usually the thing is to choose parents who are a little dysfunctional, or maybe very dysfunctional. So the typical thing is coming into a family where, maybe there's alcoholism, or they're busy, distracted, or whatever, to trigger stuff that you need to work through. So when you're working through powerlessness, sometimes there can be the criticism or the disempowerment, when you're working through inferiority, the put downs, lack of support, rejection, they may not be there for you, that sort of thing. What was your family of origin like? Was it a tough start?
No, actually. And my family of origin, my mother and father, and there's a whole separate story that I'll tell you offline. But generally, I was a very wanted child for a long time. So I did come into a very, a momentum of positivity in terms of wanting and desiring. And so I came into a lot of love. And my parents are, for a long time, we've been very close in terms of like always talking or, being on the same page. It was really the other side of the family. Right? It was really where this break. Now, I'm not going to say my parents are old souls, because I don't think my parents are old souls, which saddens me. And it has for years. And again, one of those other sort of rescuer tendencies that I have healed, or mostly healed anyway, was trying to, again, not leave them behind, to pull them with me, to educate them so that we can have a deeper connection and look at the world and not have so much fear and not have so much worry and be in a place where I live, but I wanted to be there with them. And it was at one point in the last couple of years that I let go of that, when I realized what I was doing. And I said, I can't make it, just like you said, you take over responsibility. I was trying really hard to be like, no, come with me, please. Like, here, learn this. And it wasn't happening. And I thought, okay, I at some point have to let go of control and notice, and really, because I believe all of this and I know all this at a very deep level. It's just that my behavior was shielding myself from taking that next level, because it's sad. It was sad to me to sort of leave my parents behind in that way and say, well, they're not my soul family. They're my family, but they're not those who I can connect with at a deeper level. And I have been searching for that, and I have been wanting that. And that all has shown up and been really, I'm not going to say healed, because we all have stuff and it's continued its whole life, but I've made a big dent, I think, in being able to transform that with this show. And when I took the show and branched out and made spirit, purpose, and energy, it was the gift that I didn't know I needed, which was to have an invitation to other old souls and to transmit. I mean, I've done no advertising for my show. It's all been word of mouth. It's all been people searching for things. And it's been an amazing connection. And I love you guys. And, I hope that from today's show, I know we're talking a lot about me and my background, but I hope you can hear, and I hope you're really getting, for those of you that are still struggling, that, there's a purpose for your life, and you're going to be in a certain place. And I want you all to buy the instruction. I will have a link in the show notes, but just go to Amazon and type in the instruction, Ainslie MacLeod. And, again, it's in the show notes, his name and the link. And because I want you to know, I want you to have another frame of reference besides all the things we already talk about here and the things that we work on. I want you to have an understanding of why sometimes you may struggle more than you think. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can get involved with what Ainslie has. And, he doesn't have his book for years. He doesn't have he's not doing as many past life readings. So, but I want to know from you, like, so if you're not doing them, would you recommend that someone just sort of look for somebody to do a past life something or other with?
Well, I am still doing some readings. Well, I do a lot of readings, but I'm just booked up for years. So it's, I invite anybody to get on the waiting list. It just may be a while before we can chat. But if in the meantime, every Sunday I do a broadcast. It's called Soul World Sunday. And if you just go to soulworldsunday.com, you can learn about that and come and join us. It's totally free. And just some insights. I just basically get a little sermon from the spirit guides every week, and my wife Christine and I just present this as a little thank you to to everyone. And we also have a membership program as well. If you go to soulworld.com, you can learn about that, and of course check out the book.
No, buy the book. Don't check out the book. Buy the book.
Oh yeah, buy the book. Thank
everybody,
you.
Everybody buy the book. Well, everybody who listens to the show is going to be interested, because here's the thing, and they've heard me talk about astrology. I made an astrology course and intuition, and I made an intuition course, which, by the way, both are still available. But you can, when you look at why, again, and not everyone asks why, and that's cool. As the many sages in me, and Pisces, I ask why, because I'm curious. And sometimes when I learn something or see a different point of view, all of a sudden that goes away. The feeling, the response, the story, the whatever it may be, taking it personally. And so when you look at these different soul levels, and if for some chance any of you are younger souls, right? And you read this and you think, why am I so in fear? Why am I so in fear of XYZ? And you find that you're a younger soul. I mean, that could right there could make you feel better and recognize that there's a path that you're on. And so I want everyone to get the book so that you can also look at the other people in your life, because I know that's like a next level up from just the astrological placements and the birth order and all the other things we talk about. Like the next level is if you can accept that somebody is a younger soul, like, Ainslie, when you said that at the beginning, I'm thinking, oh, thank you for that reminder that the majority of the world right now is a younger soul, because I have a hard time sometimes with compassion because of my need for freedom to look at people who are so afraid that they're like logic and reason go out the window. And I'm thinking, and just like you said in the beginning, when you look around and people think, what's wrong with these people? It's like, I mean, they're saying the same thing about us too. Like they're saying, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you afraid? Why aren't you protecting yourself? Why aren't you protecting me? How dare you do these things? And it's in the clarity now of the new versus old. And I've had another let's say minister of such on the show, and she said only 3% of our population is awake. And I thought, and while that could be a sad thing, that got me excited. So before we close today's show, you did touch upon it, and I definitely want to have you back. You mentioned about like sort of an awakening that's happening right now, that the older souls are going to, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. The spirit guides refer to this as the transformation. What we got going on, I think, I think we all know that there's something, or we heard, there's something going on, and it is a shift in consciousness. This is something the likes of which we haven't experienced in approximately 55,000 years. When back then we humans got the kind of souls that we have now, which is they describe that as stage three consciousness, which allowed us to become the creatures of reason and creativity that we are. We're going through another shift now over a space of a few generations, but it's taking us to a higher level of consciousness, in part because we have to. It's we're kind of destroying the planet, and there is some concern on the other side about, in the spirit world, about what we're doing to the place here, kind of starting to make the place a little unsustainable, and ridiculously high level of inequality and so on. A lot of times the spirit world will say it was never meant to be this way, and it won't always be this way. So this is really initiating some shifts in consciousness. It's to really get us to a place where we're much more cohesive. We're working together. It's more of a sense of like we're all in the same boat, and that we should be working for the common good. Things that I always find it just baffling that there are debates about whether or not we should have healthcare for all, or education for all, or whatever. All souls are equal. We all deserve to have equal opportunity. And so there is going to be a lot more of that as we move forward. We got some, there's always resistance whenever there's a big shift going on. There's always going to be some kind of resistance. People who they like the way the status quo is. They don't want to rock the boat. Especially if those for whom everything is okay. And not necessarily. It can be people who just, younger souls particularly, who don't really understand what's going on. It's anxiety provoking for them. But it'll take a while. We're sort of in it. It's being led by healers of all kinds. Very broadly speaking, old soul healers. It's people, particularly at late level 9, like yourself, who are leading the charge, really helping to bring this older soul awareness, this higher level of consciousness into the world. And, it's just much more focus on love, kindness, compassion, empathy, particularly. That'll be, sort of big marker of how we are in the future.
Well, that all sounds very positive. So
it does.
What level are you?
Level 10.
Which level in the 10?
90%. I do joke about. I could say anything. It's but it just happens. You are what you are. It's not like it's anything special. You just are. you have no control over it. It's one thing you don't choose in your life plan. You're just, your age is what it is. I'm right at the end. Hopefully I don't have to come back. I'm done. It's kind of trying to go out with a little bit of a bang, and just, getting books out there and stuff like that. Some old souls do that. Some, when I get to the end, they just want to stay out of trouble and get through it and hopefully be done, for the last time. Some people like me want to sort of, make a little bit more of a mark.
So you said your birthday was March 19th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny because you are a Pisces. So Pisces are, again, they're at the end. So they're the 12th sign. So Pisces would be the last life. If we were going based on just basic astrology, Pisces is the last life. But again, I'm a Pisces too. I just have other things, but I also, I've always kind of just wondered these things. And I love that this is a new tool that people can use to better understand themselves and others. And again, the goal is always two-part. It's empowerment for yourself. It's freeing yourself of anything that's holding you back. It's also compassion for others and yourself. So when we have those two things that work all the time, there's really nothing we can't do, be, or have and get through. So that's the goal. Always has been. I would love to talk more with you about many things. So,
I'd love to.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we're going to schedule to come back. And for those of you that are listening to this show, I mean, obviously I want you to get the book, but let me know what other things and conversations you want us to have, because I know we can go to past lives. I know we can go to karma. We could probably talk about soul family.
I mean, there is so much. Absolutely. And we cover a lot of that sort of stuff in the Soul World community and the membership program. I should just mention that we're taking this year, the whole year, to explore the instruction. Up until this point, we've been exploring, all the different topics. We're just focusing on the 10 parts of the instruction for the whole of this year, 1 month for each part. So it's a great time if you are interested in learning about, how your life and who you are and where you're going. It's a great time to join us. And
if someone joins now and you've already covered like the first two, are there videos to go back and watch?
Yeah, great. Absolutely.
Okay, and that's soulworldsunday.com?
That's actually soulworld.com.
Soulworld.com, but you also do a free Soul World Sunday.
That's right. Yeah.
Half an hour, 12 Pacific time.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody check out soulworld.com and also check out soulworldsunday.com. Also go to Amazon and buy the instruction, and we will meet back here to have more conversations. But if you're in the Inner Circle membership, we can have a whole conversation about what other things you want me to talk about and ask Ainslie about. It's been a pleasure. This has been an amazing conversation. I would keep you here all day if you could stay here.
I would stay if I could. Absolutely. I love my work, as you can probably tell.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're welcome. And I can't wait to have you back, and we'll do video next time so everyone can see us have a wonderful time with this conversation. Guys, thank you for listening. Ainslie, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and inspire the world.
Thank you. Appreciate it.